Imagine for a moment the sleek, powerful silhouette of a Lamborghini. It's the ultimate symbol of luxury, speed, and raw automotive power, right?
Oh, absolutely. Pure adrenaline on wheels.
But what if I told you that this icon, this House of the Raging Bull, didn't begin its life screaming down a racetrack, but rather rumbling through dirt-covered fields?
It's one of those truly astonishing origin stories. It almost sounds made up, but it's true. Automobile Lamborghini exists because of this pivotal insult-ridden confrontation.
Right, between a successful tractor manufacturer, Ferruccio Lamborghini, and the legendary Enzo Ferrari.
Exactly. That's the core of it.
And that's our deep dive today, this ultimate automotive feud. Ferruccio, I mean, here's a guy who built an empire out of tractors. He was already wealthy, and he owned Ferraris.
Several, apparently.
Yeah, and he was getting fed up with recurring clutch problems in his, I think it was a Ferrari 250 GTE.
That's the one often cited, yes.
And he recognized the clutch. He realized it was the very same type of clutch he used in his own tractors.
Which he knew how to fix, or improve even. So he goes to Enzo Ferrari.
Thinking he's being helpful, maybe. And Enzo's response, essentially dismissing him as just a silly tractor manufacturer, well, that sparked a fire.
You could say that. It ignited this fierce determination in Ferruccio. It wasn't just an insult, it was a challenge. And it led directly to the birth of Automobile Lamborghini.
So this deep dive, we're going far beyond just the glossy exterior.
Definitely. Our mission today is to unpack the counterintuitive decisions, some truly surprising facts, and just the sheer audacity that defined Lamborghini.
We'll uncover how a company born out of spite, essentially, became this global icon, just packed with eccentricities and unexpected innovations.
Get ready for some real aha moments about one of the most intriguing car makers in history. It's quite a story.
So we've set the stage with this audacious challenge from Ferrari. But to really get how Ferruccio Lamborghini could even think about taking on Ferrari, we need to look at his own background. Where did this drive come from?
Well, Ferruccio Lamborghini's roots were incredibly industrious. He wasn't born into car manufacturing. He served as a mechanic in the Italian Royal Air Force during World War II, working on military vehicles.
Okay, so hands-on experience right from the start.
Very hands-on. After the war, he was actually briefly imprisoned by the British Allied forces. But his mechanical genius was so obvious that even in prison, they put him to work repairing vehicles.
That's quite something. And once he was freed.
He really hit the ground running. He started leveraging surplus military parts, things like cheap British Morris engines, and he ingeniously modified them to build tractors.
Tractors that ran on cheaper diesel, right, after starting on petrol. Clever.
Exactly. It was smart engineering for the post-war economy. This led to his very lucrative tractor empire, Lamborghini Trattori. He eventually started building his own engines, becoming one of Italy's biggest tractor manufacturers.
And it was that industrial genius, that meticulous attention to detail he learned building tractors that really set the stage for the Ferrari clash.
Precisely. Because Ferruccio, now a very wealthy man, wasn't just building tractors. He was, as you said, a multi-Ferrari owner. Some sources say he owned like 7.
Wow.
And his daily driver, that 250 GTE, kept having clutch issues. He sees it's the same clutch from his tractors, knows he can fix it, but when he tries to share this insight with Enzo...
Dang! Silly tractor manufacturer. It wasn't just an insult. It was a direct challenge to his expertise, his pride, everything he'd built.
And the response was, well, incredibly swift and definitive. Automobili Ferruccio Lamborghini SPA was officially incorporated on October 30th, 1963.
Barely any time passed.
Almost none. And the objective was crystal clear. Produce refined grand touring cars. Cars that would directly compete with, and arguably be better than, Ferrari's road cars.
And the location, Sant'Agata Bolognese, that was strategic too, wasn't it?
Very strategic. It was near Italy's established automobile industry hub, close to Ferrari. Maserati giving them access to skilled labor, suppliers, the whole ecosystem.
And didn't he strike some kind of interesting deal with the local government?
He did. A very favorable financial agreement with the local communist leadership, actually. He promised a pretty high 19% interest rate on company profits deposited in their bank, plus 0 tax on those profits for 10 years.
In exchange for?
In exchange for using unionized workers, it was a pragmatic move to get the factory built quickly and smoothly.
So a clear vision, a factory secured with a smart deal, and then the symbol, the Raging Bull emblem. That wasn't random either.
Not at all. Ferruccio's zodiac sign was Taurus, the bull. Plus, he had this deep passion for Spanish bullfighting.
Ah, okay.
So that passion extended to naming many of the models after famous fighting bulls or breeds, Miura, Islero, Espada, later Murcielago, Reventon.
It immediately gave the brand this fierce, untamed identity, power, dominance, maybe a bit dangerous.
Exactly. It perfectly matched the spirit of defiance the company was born from.
Now, his initial ambition for the cars themselves was quite specific. He said he wanted GT cars without defects, quite normal, conventional, but perfect, not a technical bomb. So aiming for comfort, sophistication, reliability, maybe not the raw aggression we associate with Lambo today.
Initially, yes. He wanted grand tours that were luxurious and dependable, fixing the issues he saw in Ferraris. But here's where the story gets really good. That classic Lamborghini flair starts showing immediately.
You mean the debut of the first prototype, the 350 GTV?
Yes, at the 1963 Turin Motor Show. They designed and built it in, like, 4 months. An insane rush.
Okay.
And in that rush, they completely miscalculated the engine dimensions. The actual V12 engine designed by Bizzarini simply didn't fit in the prototype's engine bay.
So what did they do? You can't show a car without an engine. Or can you?
Well, they sort of did. To make sure the car sat at the right height for the show, they filled the engine bay with bricks and just kept the hood firmly shut.
No way. They showed a car full of bricks.
Yep. Bricks under the hood at their very first public appearance. It speaks volumes about Ferruccio's sheer audacity, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. That is peak fake it till you make it. Incredible. They obviously fixed that for the production 350 GT, though.
Thankfully, yes. But it's such a perfect early Lamborghini story. And speaking of that V12, let's talk about the engine itself. It became legendary.
Designed by Giulio Bizzarini, right. An ex-Ferrari engineer Ferruccio poached.
The very same.
Yeah.
And Bizzarini, coming straight from Ferrari's racing department, designed what was essentially a crazy, unreliable race engine, according to some descriptions. It could hit something like 400 horsepower at 11,000 RPM.
Wow, 11,000 RPM in the early 60s. That is a race engine.
Totally. But Ferruccio, remember, wanted refined road cars, not a technical bomb. So he insisted Bizzarini detune it for road use.
So they calmed it down a bit.
They did. Brought it down to a still very impressive 284 horsepower for the 350 GT. But what's truly incredible is the longevity of that basic V12 design.
How long did they use it?
Variants of Bizzarini's V12 powered Lamborghinis for nearly 50 years, from 1963 all the way up to the end of their Murcielago production in 2010.
50 years. That's astounding for an engine design, especially one that started out supposedly crazy.
It really is. It just shows how foundational that initial engineering was, even if it needed taming. And that spirit of, let's say, unconventional design runs through so much of Lamborghini's history.
Okay, let's get into some of those quirks. The scissor doors, everyone knows them. They started with Countach, right?
They did. And their origin is surprisingly practical, not just for showmanship.
Really? How so?
The Countach had notoriously terrible rear visibility, like you couldn't see anything reversing. So the scissor doors allowed the driver to literally open the door, sit on the sill, and lean out to look backwards while maneuvering.
That's brilliant.
And then, of course, they realized they looked incredibly cool, so the design stuck, function becoming iconic form.
What about those slotted rear windows you see on cars like the Miura, also functional?
Yep. Another clever fix. The Miura's mid-engine design meant the engine got hot, and this heat caused the rear window to fog up persistently. The engineer's solution, just cut slots in the window louvers, problem solved, and another signature look created.
It's like accidental genius sometimes. Okay, here's a weird one I read. Is it true that almost all Lamborghini engines are slightly misaligned in the engine bay?
That is a peculiar fact that gets repeated, yeah. Whether it's significant or just tiny assembly tolerances becoming legend, it adds to the mystique.
And the inspiration for the Aventador's design. I heard something truly bizarre about that.
Oh, you mean the Beetle quote? Reportedly, when asked, the designer mentioned being inspired by shiny green, jagged-like beetles that smell real bad when you step on them.
Okay, that's uniquely Lamborghini. You wouldn't get that answer at Toyota.
Probably not. And moving to the modern era, the new Revuelto, their latest hybrid flagship, even has a feature called bar mode.
Bar mode? What does that do?
It lets you raise the massive rear wing while the car is completely stationary, purely for showing off to your friends, for that oh damn moment, as they apparently put it.
That's just brilliant. Pure theater.
Exactly. And speaking of wings and theater, that reminds me of the legendary Countach wing story. You know about how they actually got those onto the cars.
I've heard whispers. It wasn't factory installed, was it? Something about regulations.
Got it. No Countach ever officially left the Senegata factory with that huge, iconic wing attached because it wouldn't pass homologation rules. It was technically an aftermarket part.
So, How did everyone get one?
Lamborghini, in their inimitable style, had a workaround. The wings were manufactured and then reportedly installed by a guy in a parking lot just down the road from the factory.
You're kidding. They bolted them on in a parking lot.
That's the legend. Pure, unadulterated Lamborghini
Wow.
rule bending. It perfectly captures that spirit.
That is absolutely unbelievable. It's this we'll do it our way attitude, and that seems to bleed into the user experience too, sometimes in quirky ways.
It does. Think about those fighter plane-style ignition switches they introduced around 2011 on the Aventador. Looked super cool, right? Flip up the red cover, press the button.
Yeah, very dramatic.
But owners apparently found flipping the cover up every single time they started the car a bit, well, tedious. A first-world problem for sure.
Okay, I can see that. So what did Lambo do?
They listened. They actually modified the design slightly, widening the hole around the button so you could just stick your finger in to press it without needing to fully flip the cover. A small change, but a direct response to owner feedback about a very unique feature.
That's actually pretty responsive. Now, let's talk about some practicality paradoxes. Those little front trunks, the frunks, they often have weird dividers in them.
Ah, yes, the Frank dividers. That's actually a clever bit of legal loophole engineering.
How so?
U.S. regulations require emergency trunk releases inside enclosed luggage compartments above a certain size. By putting a divider in, Lamborghini technically creates two smaller compartments, neither of which meets the size threshold requiring the release mechanism.
Seriously, so the divider is just there to avoid putting in a safety handle.
Pretty much. And apparently in the limited edition Centenario, it's not just a flimsy divider. It's a solid metal bar right down the middle of the already tiny frunk space.
Wow. Okay. What about useless coat hooks? I heard the Diablo had them in a place you couldn't possibly hang a coat.
That's another classic. Placed behind the
Yeah.
seats where there's absolutely zero room. And the truly funny part, they inexplicably carry that design flaw over to the Aventador decades later.
Why?
Who knows? Maybe it became a tradition. It's like certain design elements just get locked in, practical or not. It's part of the charm, maybe.
Maybe. My absolute favorite might be the early 70s cars, like the Iroquois or Drama. Their electrics weren't exactly reliable.
Understatement of the century for Italian cars of that era.
So Lamborghini actually included a special tool and put little holes in the door panels.
So owners could manually crank the windows down when the electric motors inevitably failed.
Yes.
That's prepared.
It's amazing. Like, we know this will break, so here's the backup.
And consider the poor Jalpa owners. That car apparently had 2 clocks on the dashboard.
2 clocks. Why?
Good question. And the best part, they weren't synchronized. They often showed different times, apparently drifting out of sync quite regularly, so owners would have to guess which one was actually correct.
That would drive me insane.
And then there are things like the metal bars they sometimes put in the passenger footwells. Ostensibly a footrest, but probably less comfortable than the floor.
It's just a different set of priorities, isn't it? Power, style, drama. Maybe practicality comes fourth or fifth?
Exactly. These aren't just funny quirks. They paint this fascinating picture. A company building some of the most beautiful, powerful machines on Earth could be surprisingly unbothered by everyday usability sometimes. It creates this brand identity that's almost defined by its glorious, glorious eccentricities.
So Ferruccio's audacious spirit, all these quirks, they defined the early cars. Now, let's shift gears a bit, talk about the roller coaster of ownership and how Lamborghini journeyed into the modern era, starting with some huge early innovations, the Miura.
Ah, the Miura, unveiled in 1966, widely recognized as the world's first true supercar.
And the design, Marcello Gandini, who became this legendary designer, penned the body in just 2 days.
Supposedly his first project, maybe even his first days, at Bertone. Just incredible instant genius.
And the car itself.
Revolutionary. It hit 177 miles per hour, making it the fastest production car on the planet at the time. But more importantly, its mid-engine rear-wheel drive layout basically set the template for high-performance supercars for decades to come. Still influences them today. That car changed everything.
Then there was another, maybe less famous but surprisingly successful car, the Espada.
Right. The Espada was Lamborghini's attempt at a more practical GT car, and it worked. They sold over 1,200 of them over 10 years, which was huge for Lambo back then.
What made it practical?
Proper 4 seats, a relatively large trunk for Lamborghini. And get this, it had 2 gas caps, one on each side rear pillar.
Why 2 caps? Separate tanks.
Nope. They both connected to the same fuel tank. It just meant you could conveniently fill it up from either side of the car at the petrol station. A uniquely practical, slightly odd solution.
Huh. Only Lamborghini. Okay, so these early successes were under Ferruccio, but his direct involvement didn't last forever, did it?
No, the company's journey got pretty turbulent. The 1973 oil crisis hit luxury car manufacturers hard. Plus, there was a global financial downturn. Sales plummeted.
And Ferruccio saw the writing on the wall.
Seems so. He already sold his tractor company in 1972. That same year, he sold his controlling 51% stake in Automobili Lamborghini for about $600,000 to a wealthy Swiss businessman, Georges Henri Rossetti.
Only $600,000. Wow.
Yeah, valuation wasn't high then. Then, in 1974, he sold his remaining 49% to another Swiss investor, René Leimer, and basically retired from the car business completely.
And things got worse after he left.
Much worse. The company struggled financially through the 70s and eventually declared bankruptcy in 1978. It looked like it might be the end.
But it wasn't. Who stepped in?
It was put into receivership, and then in 1980, it was purchased for a relative bargain, just $3 million, by the Mimran brothers, Jean-Claude and Patrick, young French sugar entrepreneurs.
And they managed to turn it around.
They're widely credited with saving Lamborghini. They invested heavily, modernized things, and crucially, the greenlit development of cars like the bonkers LM002 SUV.
Ah, the Rambo Lambo.
The very one. A V12-powered, military-derived off-roader. Only Lamborghini. They brought some stability and excitement back.
But they didn't hold on to it forever either.
No. In 1987, they sold Lamborghini to a rather surprising buyer, Chrysler Corporation, for about $25 million.
Chrysler, that seems like an odd fit.
It was definitely unexpected. But under Chrysler's ownership, the much-anticipated successor to the Countach, the Diablo, was finally developed and launched.
And the Diablo was a success.
A huge success. It hit 202 miles per hour, becoming the fastest production car in the world at the time. And importantly, it was the first Lamborghini to really turn a significant profit. It helped solidify the company's future.
Did Chrysler do anything else interesting with Lambo?
Well, they did fund Lamborghini's foray into Formula One engine development.
Yeah.
They built the LE 3512 V12 engine, used by teams like Larousse and Lotus between 1989 and 1993.
Was it any good?
It showed promise. Ayrton Senna actually tested it in the McLaren in late 93 and apparently loved it, wanted to race with it for 94, but the deal fell through. Still, a fascinating what if.
But Chrysler's ownership also ended. Where did Lambo go next?
Chrysler sold it in 94 to an Indonesian investment group, which didn't last long. The truly pivotal moment for stability came in 1998.
Audi.
Audi, exactly, part of the giant Volkswagen group. They acquired Lamborghini for around $110 million. And this ownership finally brought the long-term stability, the investment, the reorganization, and crucially, the German engineering expertise and quality control the brand desperately needed.
That really felt like the beginning of the modern, more stable Lamborghini we know today.
Absolutely, it was a game changer. Under Audi, Lamborghini entered its modern era with real confidence and resources. They launched the Murcielago in 2001, the Diablo's successor.
And then the Gallardo in 2003, that felt like a turning point too.
Huge turning point. The Gallardo, the baby Lambo, with a V10, was massively successful. It became Lamborghini's best-selling model by a huge margin up to that point.
How many did they sell?
Over 13,000 units during its production run. That accounted for nearly half of all Lamborghinis ever produced by the time it was discontinued. It opened the brand up, made it slightly more accessible, if you can call Lambo accessible.
And then more recently, they shocked everyone again by going back to SUVs.
The Urus, launched in 2017. It was Lamborghini's second SUV, decades after the LM002. And the market was ready this time.
It's been a colossal success, hasn't it?
Unbelievable. It quickly became the company's best-selling model ever, surpassing the Gallardo, over 20,000 sold pretty quickly. And it's not just a badge job, it's insanely fast. For an SUV, tops out around 190 miles per hour.
A proper performance SUV. So looking ahead now, electrification is the big topic everywhere. How's Lamborghini handling that?
Cautiously, but decisively, with a focus always on performance. Their first hybrid production car was the Sion FKP37 back in 2019.
That was the one with the supercapacitor, right? Very limited edition.
Exactly. V12 combined with the supercapacitor for instant electric boost, not really for efficiency. Limited to just 63 units to honor the founding year, 1963.
And the latest flagship, the Revuelto, that's a plug-in hybrid.
It is their first high-performance electrified vehicle, or HPEV as they call it. Still has a massive naturally aspirated V12, but now paired with 3 electric motors. It's incredibly powerful.
Does it have much electric-only range?
Very little, maybe 4 miles, something like that. It's clearly not about efficiency driving. It's about using hybrid tech to enhance performance, fill torque gaps, and meet emissions regulations while keeping that V12 howl. Lamborghini's approach is clear. The thrill comes first.
Stepping back from the tech, the brand itself, it's so much more than just cars. It feels like it sells a whole identity.
Oh, definitely. There's that famous quote attributed to Frank Sinatra.
You buy a Ferrari when you want to be somebody, you buy a Lamborghini when you are somebody.
That's the one. It perfectly encapsulates it. Lamborghini sells this identity of achieved success, of boldness, maybe even a touch of rebellion against the establishment.
Right.
It's not just owning a car, it's making a statement.
And they cultivate that, right? With owners, clubs, and events.
Very deliberately. They have curated VIP ownership clubs, these exclusive Experienza driving events on tracks and amazing roads. It's all about reinforcing that feeling of belonging to a very special, very bold club.
And the visual identity has evolved alongside that. It feels sharper, more modern now.
It has. The Raging Bull logo itself has been subtly streamlined over the years. The typography has shifted from more classic serif fonts to these sleek, almost futuristic geometric ones.
And the colors. They've always been bold, but now.
Now they embrace these incredibly vibrant, almost neon accents alongside the classic bold colors. Think Verde Ithaca, that electric green, Viola Pacife, a deep purple, Giallo Orion, a striking yellow. They understand the brand needs to visually shout just as loud as the engines.
It's all part of that carefully managed image. But sometimes they do things that seem genuinely nice. Like that story about the dad and son who 3D printed an Aventador.
Oh, the Sterling Backus story, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
They spent years 3D printing this replica Aventador in their garage in Colorado. Just pure passion.
And Lamborghini found out. You'd expect maybe a cease and desist from a luxury brand.
Right, but no. Instead, Lamborghini contacted them, and for Christmas one year, they secretly swapped the family's replica in the garage with a real, brand-new Aventador S Roadster for them to drive for a couple of weeks.
That's incredible. Just give him a car.
We'll loan it to them for the holidays as a reward for their authentic passion, they said. Phenomenal PR, yes, but also just a genuinely cool thing to do. It showed a connection to the enthusiasts.
It really does. And speaking of real-world use, maybe slightly less heartwarming, but still amazing, the Italian police using Lamborghinis.
Yes, they have a couple, usually Huracans, often used for highway patrol, but also for urgent medical transport.
Like organs for transplant?
Exactly. There was a famous case in 2020 where they transported a kidney over 300 miles from Rome to Padua. A journey that normally takes about 5 hours by car, they did in just over 2 hours.
Averaging what, like 145 miles per hour?
Something like that. Yeah. 233 kilometers per hour on average. An incredible use for that kind of speed.
Okay, perception versus reality check. Lamborghinis historically maybe didn't have the best reputation for reliability.
That's fair, especially the older models, as we discussed with the window cranks.
But I read something surprising about the Huracan.
Yes, the modern Lamborghinis, especially since the Audi acquisition, are much, much better built. And the Huracan, specifically, is often cited as being surprisingly reliable for a supercar. Some reports even suggest it's more reliable than benchmark cars like the Nissan GTR.
Really? More than a GTR?
That's what some data suggests. Now, you could argue Huracan owners probably drive their cars less and less hard than GTR owners, which definitely factors in.
True. Still, it challenges that old stereotype, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. Build quality is vastly improved, and we can't talk about Lamborghini's extremes without mentioning their legendary test driver, Bob Wallace.
Ah, the Kiwi. He was there right from the start, wasn't he?
From 1963 to 1975, chief test driver, development engineer. He did it all. And in those early days, Lamborghini couldn't afford dedicated test tracks or proving grounds.
Alpha Wallace.
Wallace would take the prototypes, the Miras, the early Countacs, out late at night onto public roads of the Autostrada, mountain passes, and push them to their absolute limits in real-world conditions. He was finding the edges, sometimes literally defining what these cars could do. That took serious guts.
What a job. Okay, so wrapping this up, what does this incredible journey mean for you, the listener? Lamborghini's story is just this wild ride. Born from spite, shaped by audacious design, navigating financial chaos, finally finding stability.
It's a brand forged in fire, really, and fueled by this constant defiance. From tractors to supercars, driven by Ferruccio's pride and this ongoing willingness to embrace the unconventional, the slightly mad.
It teaches us so much about the power of vision, doesn't it? And how maybe, just maybe, a perceived weakness like being a tractor maker or having a fierce rival can be turned into this incredible strength that defines a global icon.
Absolutely. It's a masterclass in building not just a product, but a powerful, enduring brand identity.
So here's a final thought for you to ponder. What does Lamborghini's journey teach you about the power of ambition? And maybe, just maybe, does true innovation sometimes need a little bit of that initial spite that I'll show them attitude to really get started? Something to think about until our next deep dive.